Yeah, just so long as it's not too big. Because if it falls on you, it's, you know, yeah, yeah. It has to have weight. It's a floor. Yeah. And if it conforms, it's not a floor. So it's got to have a density. Just as well, Kat's got a little tiny foot because she's got... And as you lie there, deal with your shame at forgetting to bring a book. Where do you notice the guilt, the feeling of inadequacy? Is it in the pit of your stomach that you just feel so bad? Or do you just feel defiant and say, I don't care, Susan. You only reminded us once. It's not enough. It's your fault. Dr. Zeus. I was looking forward to seeing all these kids' books and seeing, you know, because a bit of a window into your Dr. Zeus. And you've got Dr. Go Dog Go. Tying knots. Which one? Lorax. Oh, is that a Dr. Zeus as well? Oh. Oh, I only ever had green eggs and ham when I was a kid, as a book, not as a food. But it explains why I've never eaten ham, probably. All right. So it's been 2 days since you've laid flat on the floor in here. Maybe you've laid flat on the floor at home. So a bit like a Alcoholics Anonymous, is that, you know, my name is Julie. It's been 2 days since I've laid on the floor. So what's the nature of your addiction to the floor? What do you really like about lying on the floor? What don't you like? And what is liking and not liking? This tells you something. So sometimes we're so undifferentiated in our emotions. So we go, well, I don't like it. What is it specifically in your experience that you don't like? So in this context, you can explore that. I don't like the back of my pelvis pushing into the floor. I don't like the tightness in the front of my hips. I don't like the light shining in my eyes, or something like that. Or what do you like? Oh, I like the way I can just give up. So this is the life examined, isn't it? It's not just leaving the feeling as I like it, I don't like it, which is undifferentiated. It's I like it because. I don't like it because. And if you go that next step of examination, then you get the chance to manipulate and change what you like and what you don't like. Whereas as soon as you just make something into a dichotomy, I like it, push it, bring it towards me, I don't like it, push it away. It's very primitive, isn't it? I don't like it because I feel my throat tightening. Okay, I'll put a pad under my head. Ah, now I like it. So notice the relative position of your pelvis and its relative weight, left and right, and whether you're more towards your coccyx or more towards the top of the sacrum, or you're right smack bang on the back of the sacrum. And then what does that mean for your ability to sense your lower back? The length of your legs. And your right and your left foot at the end, hopefully, of each leg. So bend your knees up and have your feet standing. And find your book or your inadequate substitute of a book and put it on your left foot. Put it on the sole of your left foot. Now you might want to take your sock off. You can try sock on and sock off. And very gently, slowly begin to bend and straighten your knee, the left knee. That's where it's interestingly, having a bit of weight, it keeps it on the foot better than something that's really light. And how big is the movement of essentially taking the book towards the ceiling and taking a book a little bit towards the floor? Now, if the book's falling a lot, and some books will fall more than others, you can use the book a little bit and then explore the movement without the book and then put the book back on. If you're getting frustrated by the book falling, manage that. So you don't have to have the book all the time. Or if you're getting bruises, and continue to bend and straighten your foot a little bit so your foot goes to the ceiling. How bent can your knee go? And as you're continuing to bend and straighten your knee, can you notice what parts of your foot are touching the book? So there are some parts that are touching, like maybe your heel and maybe the ball of the foot. And how many of the toes? For most people, the bits that aren't touching are the arch. And how big is the arch? How can you sense the arch? So there's an arch that runs the length of your foot. So starting just in front of your heel to the ball of the foot. And then there's actually an arch that runs across the width of your foot. Do you get a sense of that? I mean, of course, for most people, the undersurface of the toes, like the pads of the toes might be touching, but the undersurface probably isn't touching because the toes have a little bit of curl. So bring the book back down and rest your feet in standing. And you can contrast the feeling of your feet on the floor, particularly your left foot, with the feeling of the contact of your left foot on the book. So with your foot on the floor, on the real floor, can you feel the heel, the ball of the foot, the pad of the 5 toes, all 5 toes or not? And feeling the bits that aren't touching. So that long arch that runs from the ball of the foot to the heel, and the crossways arch, the arch that runs from left to right on the foot. And if it's indistinct, if your footprint in your mind is indistinct, that's fine. This lesson is for you. Okay, so bend your knees if they're not already, and have the book on the bottom of the left foot again. Have your right hand behind your head and your left hand behind your left knee. And now, as you take your foot a little bit away from you, lift your head at the same time or simultaneously. And what's the timing like? How does your breathing cooperate? As you straighten your left leg, you lift your head. And of course, I don't need to remind you that you don't have to strain your left knee away from you to straighten. It's bending and straightening the amount that is comfortable and clear and doable and repeatable and sustainable. The right foot's on the floor. And what do you notice in the front of your chest? So we did a lot of chest softening last week. Are you noticing how nicely your chest folds and comes back to the floor? You can breathe. Take your arms away, leave the book on your foot and swap over your arms. So your left hand is behind your head and your right hand is behind your knee. Just get used to that asymmetry, sort of, diagonal if you like. And again, begin to push the book towards the ceiling and lift your head as you lengthen your leg. You can monitor your breathing, the smoothness of the movement. If are there any burps? We've talked about what the burps mean. And again, what's it like? What sort of folding does your chest do with the diagonal arm attached to your knee? Can you track the movement of the chest, the ribs, folding forwards in this diagonal? And what do you like better? What's nicer? What's likable about the right knee behind the right hand behind the knee versus the left? Leave your head down and just take your foot away. Put your arms by your sides and go back to pushing the book towards the ceiling a little bit in a way, and notice, has anything changed? What's this? What was that all about? Why did we soften the chest? Why did we shorten the front of you to help push the book away? Why did we essentially do a flexion of the trunk that allows you to extend your knee? And rest. Take the book down and rest with your legs long. Notice the position of your pelvis in relation to the original question of its relative position to the floor, so relatively more towards the coccyx or more towards the top of the sacrum or more to the left or more to the right. The length of the left leg versus the length of the right. And your relationship to the left foot compared to the right. How is the left foot compared to the right in terms of size, length, density, clarity. Have you got 5 toes, distinct toes on one side and a block of toes on the other, or is it a block of toes on both feet? Could be. We haven't done much with the toes yet. Okay, come back to your feet standing and put the book on the left foot. And maybe think it through a little bit first, but then take your toes away from the book. So what position would your foot be in so that your toes, the pads of your toes, all 5 toes could leave the book and return to touching the book? And leave the book and come back. And does it really help to hold your breath to move your toes? Like really? Where's the evidence that that's the case? And do all 5 toes leave at the same time? Do they peel off? Do they move en masse, en bloc? Do that a few times. And now leave the toes touching. And could you do this funny kind of scrunchy movement where the ball of your foot actually comes away? And drop the book. No. So maybe a tiny movement of, and go really gently, because for some people this will make your foot cramp. So just go gently. And how would you gently actually push the pads of your toes in so that the ball of the foot could come away? This is about, have you noticed how good your reaction times are about catching the book? Actually, this lesson has nothing to do with your foot. It's all about catching, but dexterity. Yeah. Foot-hand coordination. Foot-eye-hand coordination. Now do both movements one after the other. So the toes come away, then the toes go into the book and the ball of the foot comes away. And keep alternating between toes touching, ball of foot away, toes touching, etc. And she makes the point, this is a series of lessons from an American colleague. If you've got a very small light thing on your foot, it's harder to do. Just saying, just rubbing it in. Don't you hate people are smug? I'm smug. Can you continue the movement of the foot, so the toes and the balls of the foot, while you attend to everything else in you? Or has everything else completely disappeared and you're so engrossed, all your attention is being taken up by the toes and the ball of your foot? Good. Leave it. Bring your feet down. Have both feet standing on the floor. And continue to do this same movement, but on the floor. And you could think, why didn't we do this before? Because we didn't. We did it on the book first. And then you come to the floor so you can push the ball of the foot sorry, into the floor and the toes lift up. Then you push the pads of the toes into the floor and the ball lifts up. Gently, gently. And it might be more coming onto the tips of your toes rather than the pads, depending on how long your toes are, how curly they are. My boys have got Coombs toes, that's their dad, and they're really long. They're like fingers. They're actually quite freaky to look at. They're very, very long, so they could do this and actually keep the whole pads of their toes in contact as they scrunched up, like spider toes. But for those of you with short toes, you might come onto the tips. Phil, what is it for you? Then next time your toes come to the ground, could you begin to differentiate? This process of individuating or differentiating so that all the toes lift off and then they come back to the floor one by one. So baby toe, fourth toe, third toe, second toe, big toe. And you might have to fake it because those three middle toes don't always have a mind of their own, like literally. And then you could reverse it. So big toe first, then second toe, third toe, fourth toe, and baby. This is where you get to experience how much differentiation there is in your sensory, probably motor cortex as well, for those, particularly those middle toes. That you can sense that they're different or not, that you can move them differently or not. Breathing. And you might have noticed you have to go fairly quietly with this because, again, people can get quite a spasm in the little intrinsic muscles of the foot. So if you're getting a little spasm, just leave it, ground your foot, rest, go slower, do it in your imagination. Then just leave your feet resting there for a moment and sense the difference between the left foot and the right foot. And then put the book back on the left foot and repeat that kind of exploration of taking the book a little bit towards the ceiling and back, noticing if that's changing. And then with this idea of lifting your toes away and then the ball of the foot away on the book. In no particular, not necessarily timing it with any away or towards, just where it's comfortable. If that's changed at all or not, the ability to scrunch the toes and lift the toes. Now leave that and find a place where your leg is kind of comfortable. Now very slowly, gently explore the movement of pushing the book, so pushing your ankle a little bit straighter and then bending at the ankle. So it's that plantar flexion, so that the ball of your foot pushing away from you. And then the dorsiflexion, where your toes come more towards your nose. So, and the ball of the foot as well. So it's not differentiating the toes from the ball of the foot now. It's actually keeping the whole of the foot touching as much as possible and simply extending and flexing at the ankle joint. So it's quite a curious little tipping movement of the book. And you'll notice that particularly, one way versus another can be quite jerky. So how would you go about smoothing that out? Going slower, going smaller? What stays in contact, what leaves? And maybe if you're not sure, take the toes away from the book, just the toes, and continue to flex and extend the ankle. And is that really weird? So is it a weird thing to push the ankle a little bit straighter? So lengthening the foot, but the toes are up. Can you do that? No. Yuck. Ick. Try. Go back to having the toes able to touch and do a few more flexing and extending the ankle. Good. Leave it. Rest with your legs long. If you need to get off your back, you can get off your back. But just before you get off your back, sense the length of your legs and the position of your pelvis as your little reference scan. Contrasting the left leg with the right leg, where you are on the back of the pelvis, or anything else you might notice. Maybe you're noticing your shoulders, maybe the length of your spine or the head, your head. Bend your knees up again and put the book on your left foot. And let's put the two things together in an experiment. So as your foot goes away from you, take your toes away from the book. And then as the book comes towards you, put your toes back on. Do that a few times. And then do the opposite. So as the book goes away from you, put your toes on the book. And as the book comes towards you, take the toes away. So there's the two things that you're looking at the permutations for. The book is going towards the ceiling and away, and the toes are going towards the book and away, and you're looking at the combinations that can occur. Breathing. And so what helps you lengthen the leg, the toes away or the toes towards the book? For you, it's rhetorical, right answer for you. Or neither? Rest a moment with your feet standing. I noticed that nobody got the anatomy atlas and put that on their foot. You're all pikers. You thought about it. No, you could impale yourself on that book. Or that book could impale you, I should say. Okay, put the book on the bottom of your left foot again. And this time, instead of the knee coming straight down to the chest and the foot going straight to the ceiling, try with different angles. So could you push the book a little bit to the ceiling and more towards the left, or more towards the right, or more above your head, or down your head, but away from your head? That's not, the language failed me. So what's the kind of range that you can explore? Different angles of pushing. And what does that require in your pelvis? And the breathing. And then next time you're pushing, change the intention slightly so that it's as if you're pushing with the heel. And at this point, Elizabeth makes the point that she's an Aikido person like Ruth, is that this is sometimes called the karate kick lesson. So that you really imagine that as you're straightening your knee, you're pushing the heel to straighten the knee. And does that make a difference? Do that a few times just in your kind of favorite trajectory, and then try the different angles with this idea of kind of doing a slow karate kick with your heel. Chop, pom, in someone's squishy bits. Like, I don't know. No. You don't have to think about making contact with anybody. And would there be a place where you could kick harder, faster? Is it access all areas with that heel or not so much? Leave that, lie on your back. Notice how you're lying. Get that snapshot connection of you with the floor. The length of one leg compared to the other. The clarity of one foot versus the other. The pressure of your pelvis, left compared to right, up versus down. And are you thinking longingly of the ATM series Over the Table? Oh, God, I wish we could go over the table. So much easier. Bring your feet up to standing. And check into the contact of your 2 feet on the floor. You don't have to have the book on your foot. You can if you want, but this is just standing. And imagine standing on your feet in standing. What would it be like? If there's a change in your relationship to the left leg versus the right leg, so let's say that for some of you, you're feeling quite asymmetrical now. What would that feel like in standing? What do you imagine? What would you forecast, to use Gloria's word? And then come up and stand. Stand on the 2 feet and see, observe, feel, sense. But don't go thinking this is social, because it's not. Don't go and get a cup of tea. And take a moment to allow your attention to sink down through your pelvis into both legs. Just as if you're lying on your back and you're sensing the position of your pelvis, whether it's more forward tilted or backward tilted, whether it's rotated a little bit one way or the other, whether one side is longer so it's more dropped on one side than the other. Where is your pelvis in space without the mirror of the floor to tell you? And then over the top of your hip joints, and send your attention down through the left leg and the right leg. Sense the relative lengths of the legs, the clarity, the denseness, until you get to the contact of your feet on the floor. And you've got the contrast of sensing your feet when your legs are in that bridge position versus the foot with the book on it. What does your full weight do to the contact of your feet on the floor? Can you still sense the arch that runs along the length of your feet, left, right, and then the arch that goes across your feet, so from right to left? And those 5 cute little toes. Have you got 5 on each foot? 5 individual children that you all love equally? Or does that middle group of kids you're just not sure about because they're like, you know, they hunt in a pack, like twins or triplets? They'll do everything together. Come back to lying. Bend both your knees so that your feet are standing. And have an imaginary book. And in your imagination, it's a proper book. It's not a piece of flimsy foam. It's got a solidity and a firmness that gives you really clear contact. So imagine that you've put that book on your right foot, and imagine the right foot going towards the ceiling and then back towards the chest. So the right knee bending. So as the knee bends, the hip flexes more, so the knee comes towards the chest. And then the foot pushes away and your knee extends and your hip extends relatively. And can you imagine the feeling of the book on the sole of your foot? So that it means that your leg and your ankle can't just point to the ceiling, but there actually has to be some care in the trajectory of your whole leg and some relationship in your ankle that allows the book to be more or less horizontal so that it doesn't fall off. And in your imagination, what's touching the heel? Obviously, the ball of the foot. Is it more on the inside or the outside of the ball? Can you sense the arch, the longitudinal arch and the arch across the foot? Can you imagine all 5 toes? Are you imagining breathing? Are you imagining what's happening in your pelvis and the small of your back, in your chest? go ahead and do it in reality, or your version of reality. And what's the difference between reality and imagination? What's better? You want to live life vicariously in your imagination. Forget this reality business, it's overrated. Or is the reality better than your imagination? Did the book fall in your imagination? Straightening the leg, bending the leg. So, you know, on Friday, I'm going to fill up a whole bunch of glasses of champagne and put them on there. No, I'm not. That's a lie, because I'm not going to. I don't condone the gratuitous drinking of alcohol, especially in Box Hill, because it's yeah, that's right, be a waste. And now just rest for a moment. Bring your leg back down. Keep your feet in standing if possible, so that you've got that contrast with the real floor and the false floor. And now imagine again that the book is on the right foot. Just imagine, and the left hand is behind your head and the right hand is holding behind the knee. And imagine that as your foot goes towards the ceiling, you lift your head. And as the foot comes away from the ceiling, so the knee comes to the chest, the head lowers. And what's the timing and what's the trajectory of both? Like, is it sort of, 1 centimeter of head movement is 2 centimeters of the foot movement? You get a sense of the magnitude of the two movements. The timing is the same. What's the relative size? Can you imagine the impact of your breathing? Then imagine swapping hands. So the right hand is behind your head and the left arm is going diagonally across your chest to hold behind the right knee. And again, push the book towards the ceiling and lift the head. Not the head, your head. And is it clear to you the difference this requires in your chest? The subtly different folding that this requires, and that more of a diagonal softening of the chest rather than a side bending. Can you imagine what pushes into the floor and what moves away from the floor? And then go ahead and do those two variations. So starting off, the book is on the right foot and the right hand is behind the right knee and the left hand is behind the head. And go ahead and push the book away and lift the head and breathe and whistle a happy tune. And is it like you imagined? Is it as good or as tricky or as fun or as whatever? And then quietly go ahead and swap over hands. And again, lift your head and push the book away. Sense that diagonal softening across the front of your torso. How do the ribs fold in? Can you pay attention to the the pathway of the head and the pathway of the book as if they're the one movement. So we've done this a lot, is how do we do this? How do we put two separate movements and turn them into one movement? It's the capacity of our brain to do this that's so interesting. This capacity to associate, to link. You could say this is integration. Leave it, rest with your legs long. Bend your knees up, have your feet standing, and imagine that the book is on the right foot. Imagine the contact of the sole of the foot and the 5 toes and the ball of the foot and the heel. Just imagine. And now in your imagination, gently take your toes away. So the ball of the foot is clearer, perhaps. And then bring the toes back to the imaginary book and lift the ball of the foot away. And do that movement a few times in your imagination. Toes pushing into the book, ball of the foot coming away, ball of the foot going into the book, toes coming away. And as you continue to do it in your imagination, start to give each toe a little bit of individual attention. 5 beautiful children, 5 equal love. So as the toes come into the book, maybe you're thinking more big toe and away. Do that a few times with just the big toe, imagining, and then the second toe into the book and away. The middle toe into the book and away. The 4th toe into the book and away. The baby toe into the book and away. And then go ahead, put the book on your right foot. And first just start with the undifferentiated, or you're only differentiating the toes en masse from the ball. Do that a few times in reality. And then when you're comfortable with that, begin to individuate the toes so that it's the big toe that goes into the book and away, the second toe, and so forth. Noticing where there is clarity and where there's not. And we talked about that before. It's where there's not clarity. You could see that as ignorance, but actually can you approach the lack of clarity with curiosity? Sense that switch in the feeling of inadequacy, like, oh, I'm ignorant, I don't know, to oh, That's really intriguing. I don't know. That is so interesting. With the book still on the foot, leave the toes in the ball of the foot. You don't want to do too much of that because of the crampy business. And now just flex and extend the ankle. And how clear is that movement? It's like you're rolling a ball from one end of the board to the other. And add in, with the bending and flexing of the ankle, lifting the toes away and pushing them in. So there's two options, that you lift the toes away as your ankle lengthens, or you push the toes into the book as the ankle lengthens. And then as the ankle flexes, the toes come away or the toes push in. So try the two different combinations. And rest. Oh, good catch. You are like ninjas catching these books. You'll never do a hamstring stretch again. You just put the book on your foot and hey presto, long hamstrings. Bend your knees again and put the book on your right foot. And gently, slowly start pushing the book away from you and bend your knee and your hip so the book comes down. And how is that going? It's like you wanted to read the book, so it comes quite close to you and then you push it away. And now begin to change the angle a little bit so that you're pushing it a little bit more to the right of the ceiling, a bit more to the left of the ceiling. Breathing. And what's your left foot doing all this time? What's happening in your pelvis? Where's the weight on the back of your pelvis? Can you explore all these different areas of pushing the book and pay attention to what's on the floor at the same time? Could you turn the book around itself a little bit? So the book is more angled left-right rather than head-toe. So your leg's kind of turning around itself. That's it. Now, next time you push the book a little bit more to the left, could you think about rolling it, lifting, pushing through your heel a little bit more to the left? And as you lengthen the heel away from you, that the back of your right pelvis could lift off a little bit. So you really get that sense of kicking to the left, and the back of the right pelvis lifts off the floor. Beautiful. So the person that you're delivering the killer karate chop to is more to the left of you, and you can really add a little bit more power by rolling more onto the left pelvis, and the right pelvis lifts up. So some of you might find yourself lying on more on the left side of your pelvis. And it's the karate kick that takes you there. So your leg continues to lengthen and then come back. And it's this lengthening down through the heel, breathing, breathing. And the pelvis finding a way to roll, lift itself off the floor. As the book goes more to your left. Breathing, breathing. And of course, the left knee can move in space. It doesn't have to stay at the ceiling. So maybe something happens in the left foot. So can you think about your right foot and your left foot at the same time? Rest a little. Rest with your legs long. Ah. They all forgot their books, Jenny. They're very naughty. I want them out. I want them gone. They're dead to me. Sense the length of the right leg and the left leg. And how your pelvis is lying on the floor. And now in your imagination, have the book on the left foot. And imagine the pathway through your skeleton of the left heel pushing the book towards the ceiling, finding a trajectory of going a little bit more to the right side of the ceiling. And as your heel pushes away from you, it picks up the pelvis. The pelvis rolls a little bit so that the right side of the pelvis goes into the floor and the left side lifts away. The chest softens. The right hip softens. And you could find yourself a little bit more towards the right side of you. Think it through, breathing all the time. Deep, imaginary, beautiful belly breaths. Completely uninterrupted, unfazed by what's happening around it. So this kind of inner space of breathing is completely indifferent to what's going on around it. And go ahead, bend your knees, put the book on your left foot, and go ahead and explore firstly towards the ceiling and away, and then a little bit more towards the right. So start angling, going as small as is clear so that you can feel the connection between the heel and the back of the knee, the heel and the back of the pelvis, the heel, the connection actually between the left heel and the right foot. Is that a useful connection? Where does the book go? The heel. How does that pick the ribs up? Maybe on the left, those floating ribs on the left-hand side. And those floating ribs in the back of you are so clear now after the table lesson. Feel them lifting away from the floor and coming back to the floor. So that idea of reversibility that we talked about, the way the left heel can actually pick up the lower ribs. Sense that connection. That's it. And into the left shoulder blade. Beautiful. Such a lovely movement. Even if it doesn't feel lovely, could you fake lovely? Is your head free to roll? Good. Leave it. Rest on your back. Legs long. And have a final scan of the influence of these movements on the whole of you. What's the context? The length of your legs, contrasting to the beginning of the lesson. The clarity of the right foot and the left foot. And now when I say foot, you think, oh, that's an inadequate thing. The foot has so many interdependent parts. It's not a singular foot. It's 5 toes. It's the ball of the foot. It's the heel. It's the long arch of the foot. It's the horizontal arch of the foot, the ankle, all those little myriad parts. The length of each leg, as I mentioned, connecting up to the pelvis, and how you're lying on the back of the pelvis, more towards the coccyx or the sacrum, top of the sacrum, or somewhere in between. The weight of the left side of the pelvis to the right. And then the length of the rest of you, the length of your spine, shoulder blades, length of the neck, back of the head, the arms. Very slowly, gently bend your knees up, roll over to one of your sides. As you go, feel the weight shift from one foot to the other and come up to standing. And stand gently on each foot. What do I mean by gently on each foot? Is there some sense that the surface under each foot is a book? Or not? It's extraordinarily abstract. And as you sway your weight a little bit left and right, is there some hint that this is actually your foot moving underneath the book, as opposed to your foot moving over the top of the floor? Is that a bridge too far in your imagination? So that you're feeling all these subtle little movements in your ankle, in the arch of the foot, of either foot, the heels pushing more into the ground, or the balls of the foot pushing more into the ground, the big toe, the baby toe, all 5 toes. That the balls of the feet can lift off the floor and the toes can push in, or the toes can lift off and the balls of the feet can lift up. We can do it one at a time, together, and alternate. maybe do alternate. On one foot, the ball goes in and the toes lift up, whilst on the other foot, the toes push in and the ball lifts up. What does that invite in terms of weight shift? Oop. And very gently begin to pour your weight into one foot in such a way that the other foot wants to lift off. Bit by bit, bit by bit. And then come back and then lift up a little bit more as your weight shift. So it's like you're peeling one foot off, like a Band-Aid, like a sticking plaster, from one edge to the other, and then placing it back down. And how much would you have to peel the foot off before it would like to step forward? And you begin the process again of peeling the back foot off. And is there some kind of senses that the foot that steps forward and the heel finds the ground, does that have some memory of pushing the heel away from you when you were on your back? And now you can walk to lunch going this slowly, which means that you won't get any lunch because it will take you the whole lunch hour to get there. Okay, walk a little bit in your own time, kind of pick up the speed. So even though I'm joking, you don't want to walk to lunch like this, but is there some sense of this as you walk to lunch? Like, what would be enough? What flavor would you take? What odor? Is it the heel contact? Is it the peeling off? What is it? And come back at 1:25, please. Enjoy.